Peoples of the worldwide federated internet. What's good? We don't read our founding documents enough in the United States, to our detriment. This country is going through a period of turmoil right now. Unrest, a lot of things we don't know. The election is in dispute. Despite what you might be hearing from the mainstream media, this election is not a settled thing. I know the media is calling it for Joe Biden, but it is in dispute, and there is much evidence of something strange happening, whether that's widespread voter fraud, which I personally believe that is exactly what has happened. You might not agree, and I would not argue with you over that point, but I would definitely have a discussion, because I think there's a lot of things people are not paying attention to because the media is force feeding the people a narrative, and people are just eating that narrative up without question, which I find so insanely odd. The very thing that people talked about for years, about Russia hacking the election for 4 years straight. This election happened. We have some anomalies we can't explain, and nothing to see here. It's all good. Got a problem with that. But I want to read the Declaration of Independence. And the reason I want to read this is, one, I haven't read it in a few months, maybe a little longer. And I don't think this is something that people go over a lot. U.S. history, it's talked about flippantly, especially in school. Maybe some of you went to a school that taught history a lot better than the schools I went to, but in the schools I went to, history wasn't taught adequately. I would say everything, every matter of substance I've got from history, I learned after school. And I'm talking about things that they should have gone over while I was still in school. But anyway, let's get to the Declaration of Independence. All right. So, in Congress, July 4th, 1776, a declaration by the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled. When in course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate the governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for the future for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. Let me read that again. An absolute tyranny over these states. That could be true today. To prove this, let facts be submitted into to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the rights of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. Man, he said a mouthful there. I feel like I'm reading about right now. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such disillusions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilations, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasions from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for the purpose of obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substances. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislature. He has affected to render the military independent of the superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to jurisdiction foreign to our constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with our parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries, as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introduction the same absolute rule in these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with powers to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of the people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with the circumstances of the cruelty and perfidy scarcely parallel to the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens, taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections among us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of the excuse me of our frontiers, the merciless Indian savages whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms, and repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. See, when you read the Declaration of Independence, it gives you more insight into the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. You can kind of understand what they were getting at if you actually read these documents. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned that from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and I'm sorry, I'm gonna have a hard time pronouncing this word. Magnanimity. Man. and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, my fault, I need to slow down while I'm reading, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity or consanguinity. Ooh, some of these words. It's funny when you don't read words like this on, too often on a regular basis, they'll trip you up. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and let me catch my place, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace, friends. We therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, beautiful sound, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies solemnly publish and declare that the United Colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that a free and independent states and as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliance, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Wow. Signed by order and in behalf of the Congress, John Hancock, President. Attest Charles Thompson, Secretary. Powerful document. Very powerful document. Now, I always make it known and I say the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Constitution is not the Bible. I do not worship these documents. But as far as documents penned completely by man, these are some brilliant documents. If the thing about the United States that most people today, I guess, have kind of lost is some people view the independent attitude and spirit of the United States as a scourge, but in all actuality, it's really a shield against tyranny worldwide. Why do you think so many countries, and we see it now more than ever, so many countries are so invested into what happens in US elections? I'm not saying this out of arrogance. Why this is this way, I don't know, but it has been evident over the course of some years now. I would say maybe 80 years plus, maybe longer than that, that as the United States goes as far as direction, so goes the rest of the world. And I think people overseas in different countries understand that better than we do in our own country. And in some ways, I think we are asleep at the wheel, not paying attention. There's a reliance on government that if you read the Declaration of Independence, which I'm telling you, so even though you listen to me read through the whole thing, fumble through some words, I'm telling you, you should read this document yourself. You should check it out. Because if you read this document, what you will realize is the attitude of independence, one, is not a scourge. People view this attitude of independence in and of itself as some kind of evil thing. All the colonists were saying is, you have your boot on our neck. We can't do anything. We can't even live our lives. So we, the people, have agreed that we will not stand for this anymore. So the representatives of the people got together with a message from the people to the King of England. This was a message from the people collectively. They were like, yo, we have had enough. It wasn't just a bunch of rogues that just wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. These are people that just wanted to live their lives. Now, before heads explode and some out there bring up the scourge of slavery, I do not worship the United States of America. I worship my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I worship the Most High God of heaven and earth. That's who I worship. I'm thankful for this country, and I understand what happened during the inception of this country, and I understand it's not all perfect and it's not all good, and not everything about the history of the United States is right, but so is the history of man. From the first chapter in the book of Genesis till now, we see what man is capable of. Man is capable of great evil, and that's been from the beginning. That's not new. Sometime when people talk about the United States and bring up the scourge's scars on our history, they say that as though no other country has scars, and that's the problem I have with that approach people take. People view the love Americans have for freedom as arrogance. It's not arrogant. We just realize and understand the benefits and the blessings of freedom, and we do not want to let that go. The Declaration of Independence should be read by everyone. The U.S. Constitution should be read by everyone within the United States. I mean, I was listening to a few days ago, maybe a week ago, Sky News out of Australia. And I was impressed. These anchors on Sky News understood the U.S. Constitution better than the American media. That is a crying shame. We need to be familiar with our history in the United States. This should not be something that is foreign to us. We live here. Why don't we know more about our own history? I'm all about learning world history. I love history. I would not call myself a history buff, but I'm definitely a history enthusiast. I love history. We need to learn about the history of our homeland. Yes, I am a black man that said our homeland. I was not born in Africa. There's no doubt in my mind that I more than likely have descendants from Africa, but I was born in the United States of America. This is my homeland. We definitely need to know more about our own history and about our own founding documents, because we are slipping into, this is kind of what I was getting to today. We are slipping into government dependency. If you read the Declaration of Independence, you will see that the founders were saying, hey, we're not against government, but the government needs to be approved by the people. And it is not the other way around. The government doesn't approve us. We approve them. That's how it's supposed to work. We need to be more self-reliant. I'm not talking about never getting help. And I'm not saying that the government can't at times offer help. I'm saying we need to be more self-reliant and less government reliant. When you read these founding documents, you see that this is all they wanted. They weren't against government. They were just saying, let us live our lives. And if we require assistance from the government, we're thankful that you are there. But you work for us. We don't work for you. Y'all know what it is. Stay frosty, people.